The terminal had that hollow sound it only gets after midnight, when announcements echo too long and footsteps feel louder than they should. Departure boards flickered with the same word repeating itself like a warning no one wanted to hear. Cancelled. Delayed. Rescheduled. She stood beneath it with her jacket folded over her arm, watching the crowd thin out in uneven waves. People left in pairs. In families. With certainty. She stayed. Her phone buzzed once in her palm and went dark. 1% had become nothing. She turned it over anyway, as if staring might bring it back. Didn't. The charging stations nearby were already occupied or broken, cords dangling like abandoned promises. Somewhere behind her, a janitor pushed a cart slowly, the wheels squeaking in protest. The sound made her tense. Something already felt wrong, and she couldn't name it yet. The airline desk lights shut off one by one. A woman in uniform flipped the sign to closed without looking at the small cluster still waiting. When someone protested, the response came flat and rehearsed. Come back in the morning. Hotel vouchers were gone. Systems were down. Security would escort remaining passengers out soon. Out where, she wondered. The exits felt farther than they had an hour ago. She checked her pockets. Wallet. ID. A credit card that had already been declined once tonight. She tried not to think about the balance. She tried not to think about the time. She told herself she'd find a corner to sit in until sunrise. Airports were safe, weren't they? Public places. Cameras. People. That belief held for a few seconds longer, until she noticed how few people were left. The automatic doors sighed open and closed as the last group exited. Cold air rushed in, then disappeared. The terminal grew quieter. Too quiet. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened glass of a closed cafe. Tired eyes. Smudged makeup she didn't remember applying. She rubbed her face with both hands and exhaled. This wasn't panic yet. It was the moment before it, when your body knows before your mind does. She walked toward the restrooms just to keep moving, heels clicking too sharply on the polished floor. The sound followed her, lonely and exposed, when she came back out. Security was speaking in low voices near the far end. Not arguing. Deciding. One of them glanced her way, then away again. She felt suddenly visible, like she was doing something wrong just by standing there. She considered asking for help and stopped herself. What would she even say? I don't have anywhere to go. The words felt childish in her mouth. She checked her bag again. Lip balm. Nothing that solved anything. She thought about calling someone, then remembered the phone. The dark screen felt heavier now. Useless weight in her hand. She sat on a metal bench near the windows, hugging her coat around herself. Outside, black cars moved through the drop-off lane in slow, deliberate lines. Headlights cut through the glass, then vanished. One car didn't. It idled longer than the others, engine barely audible. A luxury sedan, dark, the windows tinted enough to hide whoever sat inside. She noticed it without meaning to, the way you notice something that doesn't fit. The driver didn't get out. No luggage was unloaded. The car simply waited. She looked away, annoyed at herself for staring, and focused on the floor instead. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time was slippery now. She stood again, unsure why, and started toward the exit when one of the security guards raised a hand. We're closing the terminal, ma'am. His tone wasn't unkind. It was final. She opened her mouth to argue and closed it again. Where am I supposed to go? She didn't ask. She nodded instead, because nodding was easier than admitting she had no answer. The guard turned away, already done with her. She stepped outside into the cold. The doors slid shut behind her with a sound that felt like a decision. The airport lights hummed overhead, too bright, too exposed. The curb stretched in both directions, empty now. She stood there with her bag at her feet, heart starting to beat faster than it should. This was it. No more benches. No more cameras she could see. No more illusion of shelter. This was the moment she stopped being protected by public spaces. She bent to zip her bag, hands shaking just enough to notice when she felt it. Not a touch. Gaze. She straightened slowly. The same black sedan was still there, parked a short distance away. The driver's window lowered just an inch, not enough to reveal a face. She couldn't see who was inside, but she knew she was being watched. Not casually, not accidentally, intentionally. She took a step back without thinking. The car didn't move. Her breath caught in her throat. Every instinct told her to walk away, but there was nowhere to walk to. The terminal doors were locked. The road beyond the curb disappeared into darkness. She stood very still as the window slid back up. Inside the car, someone shifted. She couldn't hear anything, but she felt the attention settle on her like weight. Her last safe option was gone, replaced by something she couldn't yet define. The engine purred softly, patient. She swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the car, and wondered why the man watching her hadn't called airport staff. The door of the sedan opened without a sound. No rush, no urgency. Just a quiet, deliberate movement that made her chest tighten. The man stepped out and closed it behind him with the same restraint. He didn't glance around. He didn't scan for threats. He walked toward her like the night belonged to him and had agreed to wait. He was dressed simply, dark coat, no visible jewelry, nothing that tried to impress. What unsettled her was how unbothered he looked by the empty curb, the locked terminal, the cold that cut through her sleeves. He stopped a few steps away, far enough to be polite, close enough that she could hear his voice without him raising it. "You look like you've been abandoned," he said. Not accusatory, not kind, observational. She stiffened. "I'm fine," she replied automatically, hating how thin it sounded. He nodded once, as if she'd confirmed something he already knew. "Fine usually doesn't involve cancelled flights and a dead phone," he said. Still calm. Still measured. He didn't reach for her bag. Didn't step closer. He gave her space, and that somehow made the space feel smaller. "Security says the terminal's closed," she said, more to fill the silence than to explain. "I know," he replied. The way he said it suggested he knew more than that. He gestured gently toward the car. "I can get you where you're going. Or at least somewhere warm." The word warm slipped under her defenses. Her fingers were numb. Her breath fogged the air. She looked past him at the sedan, then back at his face, searching for something obvious to reject. There wasn't anything. No smell of alcohol. No impatience. No smile that asked for anything in return. "What is the catch?" she asked. He tilted his head slightly. "No catch. Just an offer." She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "There's always a catch." His expression didn't change. "Then consider it a transaction you don't yet understand," he said. The honesty of that made her pause. He reached into his coat and pulled out a phone, already unlocked, screen bright. He held it out so she could see a flight map, a small icon lifting off from a nearby runway. "My jet is leaving in 15 minutes, he said. It wasn't a boast. It was a schedule. "I'm headed in your direction." She shook her head slowly. "I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to," he replied. The sentence settled heavily between them. She glanced toward the terminal doors again, as if they might open out of pity. They didn't. The curb remained empty. The road beyond was dark. Her phone was still dead. She imagined calling a rideshare and laughed again. Quieter this time, he sensed the shift before she spoke. "You can decline," he said. "I won't insist. But security won't let you stay here, and they won't reopen the terminal." He let the words sit. Choice narrowed itself without him pushing. She hated him for that, and hated herself more for noticing. "Where exactly are you going?" she asked. He named a city that made sense. Too much sense. Major hub. Familiar. Her heart thudded harder. "How did you know that's where I was headed?" she asked. He smiled then briefly. Not reassurance. Acknowledgement. "'Cause you checked the board 3 times, he said. "Gate 12. Last flight out before midnight." She swallowed. She hadn't realized she'd been that readable. He opened the back door of the sedan. Warm air spilled out. Leather seats. Clean. Untouched. "You don't have to trust me," he said. "Just the fact that staying here is worse." That did it. Not the jet. Not the confidence. The way he framed it as survival, not rescue. She picked up her bag. The moment she did, something inside her shifted. A quiet click she felt rather than heard. She was stepping into something she couldn't verify, couldn't control. She told herself it was temporary. Just a ride. Just warmth. She slid into the back seat and pulled the door closed. The sound was final. He got in beside her. Not touching, not crowding. The driver pulled away smoothly. As they passed the terminal, she noticed 2 security vehicles idling near the entrance. One of the guards looked toward the sedan and then deliberately looked away. No questions. No signals. Just acceptance. Her pulse spiked. "Why aren't they stopping us?" she asked. The man didn't answer immediately. The car turned onto a restricted road she didn't recognize. "Because I asked them not to," he said finally. His tone remained even, but something else crept in now. Authority. The road opened ahead of them, lights guiding them toward the runway. She pressed her palms together, trying to keep them from shaking. Help without witnesses is never free. The phrase formed in her mind as the hangar doors slid open and a sleek jet waited inside, engines already warming. She followed him out of the car, the cold biting again, and watched as airport staff moved aside without a word. No badges were checked. No names exchanged. Everything happened too smoothly. She climbed the steps into the jet, heart pounding, and glanced back once more at the empty tarmac. The door closed behind her. The engines roared to life. And she realized she had accepted assistance she could not verify, from a man no one dared question. He didn't look at her as the jet lifted. Not at first. He watched the runway lights fall away, the city shrinking beneath them, the familiar sensation of control settling back into his body. Flying always did that. It reminded him who decided direction, who decided distance. Only when the plane leveled did he turn his head slightly, just enough to see her reflection in the darkened window across from him. She was holding her bag in her lap like a boundary, shoulders tense, eyes alert, not panic, not relieved either, observant. That mattered more than fear. She didn't know his name. That was intentional. Names carried weight, and weight altered behavior. He had learned that early. Before inheritance. Before blood turned into currency. She knew him only as the man who hadn't raised his voice, who hadn't rushed, who had offered a way out when the world narrowed around her. He preferred it that way. People were honest before they understood stakes. He shifted slightly, and a member of the flight crew appeared without being summoned, placing a glass of water on the table between them, not asking if they wanted anything. Already knowing. The crew avoided eye contact with her, but their posture changed subtly around him. Deference layered with caution. She noticed. He saw her notice. Good, she cleared her throat. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For the ride." He inclined his head. "You're welcome." He didn't say more. Silence was a test. People filled it when they needed reassurance. He didn't. She drank the water slowly, eyes flicking toward the cabin door, then back to him. "You do this often?" she asked finally. "Help stranded travelers?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "No," he said. The honesty hung there. She waited for elaboration. None came. The jet hummed steadily, smooth and insulated from everything below. He could already feel the machinery moving around them, unseen messages sent, names checked, histories cross-referenced. It had started the moment he told the driver to follow her. It always did. Systems didn't pause for curiosity. She leaned back slightly, testing the seat, the space. "Whoever you are," she said, "people don't say no to you." That observation landed exactly where he expected. He met her gaze fully now. "That's not always true," he replied. "But tonight it is." Something passed through her expression then. Not fear. Calculation. The kind that came from living without safety nets. He recognized it because he'd grown up watching it in others. Long before he learned he would never need it himself, he thought briefly of his father, of the way rooms changed when he entered them. How adults lowered their voices. How deals were sealed with glances instead of signatures. How power wasn't announced. It was assumed. He had inherited that assumption the way others inherited land. He didn't need to prove it. He only needed to decide where to apply it. She stood and walked a few steps down the aisle, pretending to stretch, pretending not to look for exits. There were none she could reach. The realization settled into her shoulders. When she turned back, her voice was steadier. "Where are you really taking me?" "The city you were already going to," he said. "That hasn't changed. What has changed is what happens after." She frowned. "After what?" "After we land." The answer wasn't cruel. It was factual. He watched it sink in. This wasn't kindness. It was selection. He had seen something in the way she stood alone at the curb, in the way she didn't beg or demand, in the way she noticed details instead of comfort. She was adaptable. That was rarer than innocence. He glanced at his phone, the screen lighting briefly with information he didn't need to read twice. No immediate threats. No obvious ties. A life small enough to disappear without noise. That, more than anything, had decided it. Leaving her behind would have been easy. Forgettable. He didn't like easy when it wasted potential. "You don't have to be afraid," he said, and meant it in the narrowest sense. "No one will hurt you tonight." She studied him. "That's a very specific promise," she said. He nodded. Specific promises were the only ones that mattered. The jet continued forward, cutting through darkness. Below them, choices closed one by one. She didn't know she had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He did. He watched her sit back down, clutching her bag less tightly now, and made the decision fully, irrevocably. She would not be left behind. The system had already adjusted around her presence, gears turning quietly. The danger wasn't that she was with him. It was that someone like him had noticed her at all. And as the lights of the destination city began to appear in the distance, the question wasn't why he had chosen her, it was what had made her worth choosing. The doors sealed with a sound that was too final for something meant to reassure. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of decisions already made. She felt it in her chest before she understood it with her mind. The jet began to move, a slow, deliberate roll that pressed her back into the seat as if reminding her that forward was the only direction left. He didn't look at her when the engines climbed. He watched the cabin crew instead. Not to command them. To confirm what he already knew. They moved differently now. Quieter. Precise. No unnecessary words. A glance before every step. A subtle pause as if waiting for permission that was never spoken. She noticed the change because she had learned to notice power before it announced itself. When the plane leveled, a soft chime sounded. The lead attendant approached him first, not her, and spoke in a low voice that carried just enough to be intentional. "We're airborne. The route is clear. No delays anticipated." He nodded once. "Thank you." The attendant turned only then to her, offering a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "If you need anything, please remain seated. We'll let you know when it's appropriate to move." The word appropriate landed harder than the altitude shift. She opened her mouth to ask what that meant, then closed it. He watched that decision too. Good instincts survived longer than bravery. She tried to ground herself by cataloging the space. Leather seats. Dark wood trim. No visible safety cards. No signage. This wasn't a commercial plane adapted for luxury. This was purpose-built. Designed to be private. Designed to be unquestioned. Her phone buzzed once, then went dead. No signal. No bars. She swallowed. "How long is the flight?" He answered without looking at her. "Long enough." The jet adjusted course slightly, banking left. She felt it through her feet. That wasn't on the schedule she had imagined. "Where exactly are we going?" He met her eyes then, calm and unreadable. "The place you were headed. The path just changed." She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Paths don't just change in the air. They do when the ground stops being an option," he said. The truth in it unsettled her more than a lie would have. She shifted in her seat. A few minutes passed. She stood, testing whether movement itself was forbidden or only unsupervised movement. The attendant appeared immediately, as if summoned by the idea rather than the action. Please remain seated for now. It's for your safety. She looked past the attendant to him. For whose safety, he didn't answer. That was an answer. The realization arrived quietly. Rules weren't written. They were enforced through timing, through response, through the absence of resistance. She sat back down. The attendant retreated. The jet continued, steady and indifferent. She tried again, softer this time. You said no one would hurt me tonight. His gaze held. That remains true. Her chest tightened. You didn't say no one would stop me from leaving. Was. Barely perceptible. Correct. The air felt thinner, though the cabin pressure hadn't changed. She understood then that safety here was conditional. Temporary. Dependent on his interest. Altitude didn't equal safety. It only delayed consequence. She leaned back and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of the engines. Somewhere above the clouds, she imagined satellites tracking movement, numbers updating, eyes that didn't blink. She didn't know who was watching this jet, but she knew better than to assume no one was. He checked his phone again. Single message. Coordinates confirmed. He deleted it without reading twice. The choice was already made. She noticed the movement. Everything about him was economical. Nothing wasted. Not words. Not gestures. Not people. The jet hit mild turbulence. Her fingers dug into the armrest. The attendant didn't react. He didn't either. This was familiar territory for him. Controlled instability. She wondered if that was what her life had just become. She turned toward him fully. If I'm not allowed to leave, she said, then I deserve to know why I'm here. His voice was steady. You're here because someone would have taken advantage of you if I hadn't. Her laugh was softer this time. And now you know who is interested in you. He looked past her to the window, where the darkness pressed close. Someone is tracking this jet, he said, as if commenting on the weather. She stiffened. You're sure? He nodded. Not aggressively. Not yet. But attention has shifted. That's the cost of altitude. The jet flew on, engines steady, doors sealed, rules unspoken but absolute. She had crossed from public space into private air, from choice into permission, from help into custody. And somewhere below them, unseen and uninvited, someone else was counting their movement, waiting for the moment when being airborne would no longer be protection at all. The first lie unraveled without drama. No raised voices. No sudden confession. Just a sentence placed carefully where it couldn't be ignored. He spoke it while the jet leveled again, as if balance made truth easier to carry. You misunderstand why I intervened. She didn't look at him. She already felt the shift. People who rescue don't correct assumptions. They let gratitude do the work. What do you mean? He watched the dark window instead of her face. You weren't helpless. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Relief tried to surface, then stalled. Then why? Because leaving you there created risk. The words didn't land all at once. They arrived in parts. Risk to who? Her. Someone else entirely. She turned to him fully now. Risk to whom? His answer was immediate. To me, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded with implications. She waited for him to soften it. He didn't. You were seen, she frowned. Seen by who? By people who know how to read situations. A young woman stranded. No protection. No witnesses. That kind of vulnerability attracts attention. She swallowed. And you're saying, he interrupted gently. I'm saying your presence in that terminal intersected with ongoing business. Wrong place. Wrong timing. Leaving you there would have created variables I don't tolerate. The last word settled like a lock clicking into place. Variables, she leaned back, staring at the ceiling again. So this wasn't rescue. He didn't deny it. This was mitigation. The jet hummed around them, steady and indifferent. Her heart wasn't. If I was a risk, she said slowly, then why bring me closer? Why not remove the risk? He considered her for a moment. Truly considered her. Removal creates noise. Containment creates silence. The word landed harder than anything before it. Containment. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You're keeping me here to protect yourself, that he nodded. And others? She shook her head. That's not protection. That's custody. A faint smile touched his mouth. Semantics don't change outcomes. The truth finished assembling itself in her mind. She hadn't been rescued because she needed help. She had been taken because she mattered to a situation she didn't understand. Her safety was a byproduct, not the goal. Staying near him reduced risk. Letting her go multiplied it. She sat forward. If I'm a risk, then keeping me here makes me a target. His eyes met hers. Exactly. The admission sent a chill through her that altitude couldn't explain. Then why am I still here? Because now that you're involved, releasing you creates more danger than keeping you close. The sentence was calm, reasonable, final. This was no longer a rescue story. It was containment. She pressed her palms against her thighs, grounding herself. Somewhere between panic and clarity, a harder realization took shape. You're saying if I try to leave? He didn't let her finish. I'm saying movement without coordination would escalate things. The engines shifted pitch slightly. Course adjustment. She wondered how many adjustments were happening around her that she would never feel. She looked at him again. And if I stay, you'll be watched, protected, managed, until the risk dissipates. When does that happen? He didn't answer immediately. That pause was the most honest thing he'd given her. Depends on what you represent. She stared at him. I don't represent anything. I'm just. He raised a hand, stopping her. You don't get to decide that. Not anymore. The words cut cleanly. No cruelty. No anger. Just fact. She leaned back, breathing slowly. The jet felt smaller now. The space between seats tighter. Staying was dangerous. Leaving was worse. The choice she thought she'd made at the terminal had already expired. She tried a different question. Who else knows about me? He didn't hesitate. Enough people to make mistakes costly. Enough to make disappearance noticeable. Her chest tightened. So if I vanish, they'll look. And they won't assume accident. She closed her eyes briefly. This was the reset. The moment the story changed shape. The promise of help had been a door that closed behind her. What remained was a corridor with no exits marked. She opened her eyes. Then tell me what I am. He studied her, weighing how much truth she could carry without breaking. You're a variable that crossed into controlled space. A witness without intent. A liability that became visible at the wrong time. She absorbed it in silence. Then asked the question that mattered most. What danger do I represent? He answered softly. You make certain people nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. The jet flew on through the dark, carrying them toward a destination she hadn't chosen, bound by a logic that didn't care about fairness. She had wanted help. She had gotten strategy. And somewhere beyond the clouds, decisions were already being made about what to do with a risk that now had a face. The first change was subtle enough that she almost missed it. It came wrapped as courtesy. The phone she'd been given buzzed once, then went still. No signal. No warning. When she asked, a man in a dark suit smiled politely and said, "We'll handle communications for now." She laughed at first. Reflex. That's not necessary. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He simply took the phone when she handed it back, as if this had already been agreed upon. Somewhere in that moment, something loosened inside her. Not panic. Awareness. The second change came with movement. Or rather, the lack of it. When the jet landed, she expected a terminal. Less noise. Options. Instead, a private hangar. 2 vehicles. Engines running. Doors already open. He didn't ask which car she preferred. He walked toward one, and everyone else moved accordingly. She followed because stopping would have required a reason, and she didn't yet know which reasons were still allowed. The city blurred past the windows, but the route felt wrong. Too indirect. Too clean. She noticed how often they turned without stopping. How rarely they slowed. When she asked where they were going, the answer came easily that we adjusted the route. For safety. Whose safety? She didn't ask out loud. She was learning which questions closed doors. The building they arrived at wasn't hidden. That was the unsettling part. It stood in plain sight. Modern. Secure. The kind of place people walked past every day without seeing. Inside everything worked too smoothly. Elevators already waiting. Floors accessed without buttons. People stepping aside before being told. She was led into a suite that looked temporary but wasn't. Clothing in her size. A bathroom stocked as if she'd lived there before. A view that didn't open. The man who'd brought her here stood near the door. "You're safe here." The phrase slid into place like a seal. She tested it. "How long will I be here?" He didn't answer directly. "Until it's no longer necessary." That night, she tried to step outside the room. Just to feel the hallway. A guard shifted. Not aggressively. Just enough. She retreated, heart steady but tight. Independence doesn't vanish in a single moment. Thins. It's traded in pieces. The next morning, her schedule was already prepared. Breakfast at a specific time. A meeting she wasn't attending but was expected to sit through. Breaks accounted for. Rest encouraged. She stared at the printed page. "I didn't agree to this," the man across from her nodded. "Well, you didn't?" She looked up sharply. "Then why?" "Because agreement isn't the same as necessity." His honesty disarmed her more than reassurance would have. Everything was framed as care. "Rest. Don't worry. Let us handle it." And yet every choice had been pre-made. Every exit softly guarded. This was the moment safety stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like architecture built to hold her in place. Safety arrived without exits. She tested the boundaries in small ways. Just to walk alone. Declined an escort. Each request was met with calm refusal. Not now. Too visible. Later. She noticed how often the word visible came up. Visibility was danger. Movement was risk. Independence was exposure. And always the implication. "This is for you," she finally confronted him that evening. "You're shrinking my world," that he didn't deny it. "I'm narrowing it." He poured himself a drink, offered her one. She refused. From the airport to this room, every step had been decided by someone else. "You said staying close reduced risk." That he met her eyes. For me." And for me." He paused. That pause told her everything. It reduces certain risks. Introduces others. She exhaled slowly. "You're not protecting me from accidents." He shook his head. "No." She leaned forward. "Then tell me the truth. Who are you protecting me from, and why?" The question hung between them, heavier than any threat spoken aloud. He didn't answer right away. Outside, the city moved as if nothing had changed. People choosing routes. Making calls. Living inside freedom she could suddenly see clearly because they were gone. "Finally," he said, "from people who believe you know more than you do. And from people who would hurt you to prove a point." Her throat tightened. "About what?" "About me." The word landed with quiet finality. Not the man. Position. The name she still didn't fully understand. She sat back. The shape of the cage now unmistakable. Protection wasn't about keeping her safe. It was about controlling the damage her existence could cause. And somewhere beyond the walls, someone was already asking why she mattered enough to guard. The first whisper didn't reach her directly. It never does. It surfaced in a pause. A conversation that stopped when she entered the room. A glance held a fraction too long. A smile that didn't reach the eyes. She noticed it during a meeting she wasn't meant to attend. She sat beside him, silent, exactly where she'd been told to sit. No introductions. No explanations. Just proximity. People noticed that more than words, in his world, presence is endorsement. She saw it in how men recalculated their posture when they realized she wasn't staff. In how questions meant for him briefly flicked toward her, then away. In how no one asked who she was, Yet everyone seemed to agree she mattered. Outside the building, the noticing multiplied. A photograph taken from across the street. A blurred reflection in tinted glass. Her face, caught beside his profile, already moving through channels she couldn't see. He didn't warn her. He didn't need to. The guards tightened without comment. Routes adjusted again. Meetings rescheduled because too many unknowns had appeared. She finally asked, "Who's watching me now?" He answered honestly. "People who don't need to know you to use you." That night, she learned what visibility cost in his world. It began with names. Not spoken aloud but referenced. Old families. New alliances. People who tracked bloodlines the way others tracked markets. To them, she wasn't a woman. She was a variable. And variables invite testing. In rooms she would never enter, men asked questions about her background. Where she came from. Who she belonged to. Why she was still breathing beside him if she didn't carry a known name. Someone joked that she must be leverage. Someone else said, or bait. The word followed her without being said. She felt it the next time they went out publicly. Not an event. Just dinner. He didn't hide her. That was the mistake. Or the message. She sensed eyes before she saw them. Table too quiet. A waiter too attentive. A man near the exit who watched her reflection instead of her face. She leaned closer to him. People are staring. He didn't look around. Let them. This was the moment proximity became a confession. In this world, proximity is a confession. By morning, the whispers had turned into calculations. If she mattered to him, she mattered to his enemies. She could be moved, she could be used. She could be broken, she could be tested. The first message arrived indirectly. A comment made to someone who repeated it to someone else who finally let it slip near her. She's becoming expensive. She didn't understand at first. Then he explained. When something is valuable and unguarded, people steal it. When it's guarded, they wait. They price the risk. She swallowed. They're talking about me as if I'm a position. He didn't soften it. You sit in a space people want access to. You didn't ask for it. But you're there. She stared at him. And that makes me what? A bargaining chip. Or a warning. That was the first time fear returned. Not sharp. Not panic. Heavy. Calculated. She asked the question she'd been avoiding. If I leave. He shook his head slowly. Outside you're unprotected. Inside you're contested. Which is worse? He didn't answer immediately. Someone knocked. Whispered something in his ear. The air shifted. He dismissed the man, then turned back to her. They're discussing terms. She frowned. Terms for what? For proving I'm not weak. Her stomach dropped. By hurting you. He met her gaze. By showing restraint. That didn't comfort her the way it should have. She learned later what restraint looked like here. It wasn't mercy. It was delay. That evening, a name was mentioned in her presence for the first time. Someone powerful. Someone curious. Someone who had asked what it would cost to make her disappear. Not violently. Quietly. Cleanly. She sat very still. And you said no. He nodded. For now. The phrase echoed. For now. She understood then that nothing about her situation was stable. It was balanced. And balance invites pressure. The final confirmation came when she overheard two men speaking outside her door. Not guards. Visitors. They didn't know she was listening. The bounty isn't on him, one said. That's why it's clever, the other replied. She stepped back before they could sense her. The words burned. Bounty. Not on him. On her. She went to him immediately. They're talking about me like I'm already gone. He didn't deny it. His jaw tightened. This is what attention does. She searched his face. Am I safer inside your world or outside it? For the first time since she'd met him, he hesitated. And that hesitation was the most dangerous answer of all. He didn't offer it as a discussion, he presented it as a solution. A folder appeared on the table between them. Precise. No labels. No logos. Just wait. She didn't touch it. This can end cleanly, he said. New documents. New name. Place where no one will look. Silence. That he spoke the word silence like a promise. She finally opened the folder. The life inside it was efficient. Too efficient. Passport already stamped. Accounts seeded, not funded. A job that existed but hadn't started. Friends she would meet but never know. A future with no past. This isn't escape, she said, it's protection. He corrected her calmly. She looked up. From who? From the people who now know you exist. From you. The pause answered before he did. From the consequences of proximity. She closed the folder. If I take this, I disappeared, he nodded. Once you vanish, the interest dissolves. No leverage. No rumors. No reason to reach for you. She felt the weight of it then. Not fear. Erasure, you'd still be alive, he added. That wasn't comfort. That was containment. She pushed the folder back. I won't vanish. He frowned slightly. This isn't defiance. It's survival. She shook her head. Survival that requires me to erase myself isn't survival. It was the first time she'd said no without asking permission. The air changed. Not violently. Strategically. You don't understand the pressure this creates, he said quietly. I understand exactly enough. She stood. If I disappear, I confirm I mattered. I confirm fear. I confirm weakness. He rose too, slower. Staying does the same. Staying does something else, she said. It forces you to stand beside me. That was the cost he hadn't named. She met his gaze. If I leave, they'll chase the absence. If I stay, they have to look at you. He studied her then. Not evaluating. Measuring damage. You're choosing visibility. Yes. She didn't soften it. Visibility is a declaration. The word settled like a line crossed. This choice aligns us, he said. Not equally. She didn't argue that. She just stepped closer. Publicly. That night she didn't hide. She didn't take the back exit. She walked beside him through a room that went quiet the moment they appeared, eyes lifted. Phones stilled. Calculations rewrote. She felt it. The shift from speculation to confirmation. She's staying. They saw it in how he adjusted his pace to match hers. In how no one blocked her path. In how a seat appeared beside him without instruction. Someone laughed too loudly. Someone else left early. The city took notes. By morning, the disappearance option was dead. He burned the folder himself. Not ceremonially. Practically. Ash into steel. She watched without relief. What happens now? Now you're visible. He didn't frame it as victory. Or protection. Just consequence. The backlash was immediate. Not explosive. Structured. Meetings cancelled. Invitations withdrawn. A business partner asked an innocent question that wasn't innocent at all. How close is she? He answered by bringing her to the next meeting. He didn't announce her. He didn't introduce her. He let the room decide what her presence meant. She felt the pressure tighten. Not on her body. On her future. This wasn't a role she could step out of at will. It was alignment. She understood what she'd broken when a warning reached her anonymously. One sentence. No signature. You don't stand beside kings unless you're prepared to fall with them. She showed him the message. He read it once, then deleted it. They're testing boundaries, he said. And me? You crossed one already. Which one? The oldest rule in this world. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. She had refused erasure. She had chosen presence. She had accepted that being seen was not neutral. She asked the question anyway. What rule did I break? He looked at her with something close to honesty. You reminded them I'm not untouchable. She felt the weight of that. Not pride. Responsibility. She stayed beside him that night. And the next. And with every step in public, every glance that lingered too long, the alignment hardened. There would be no clean exit now. No quiet return to anonymity. She hadn't chosen him. She had chosen not to vanish, and in his world, that choice was louder than loyalty. It didn't happen near her. That was the first thing she understood. The retaliation didn't arrive with noise or warning or a threat delivered to her door. It happened somewhere else. Quietly. efficiently. So clean that by the time whispers reached her, the damage was already permanent. She heard it in fragments: a driver who didn't arrive, a meeting that never started, a phone that rang until it stopped being answered. She didn't ask questions at first. She watched him instead. He was calm in a way that felt practiced. Not relieved. Not satisfied. Just aware. That awareness frightened her more than anger would have. Someone tested the boundary, he said finally. She waited for the rest. They assumed proximity meant leverage. He didn't say names. He didn't explain method. He didn't need to. The city filled in the blanks for her: a warehouse fire with no witnesses, a financial director who resigned hours before vanishing, a rumor of a body that never surfaced. She felt it settle in her chest, heavy and undeniable. This wasn't chaos, this was correction. She confronted him that night. Not loudly. Not emotionally. She had learned that volume didn't move men like him. Did someone die because of me? He didn't deny it. Not because of you, he said. Because of what they tried to do with you. That distinction was meant to protect her. It didn't. He crossed the room slowly, careful not to crowd her. They believed hurting you would weaken me. She didn't step back. And what did you show them? That alignment has consequences. She swallowed. Someone paid. He met her gaze. Yes, that was the moment the story collapsed inside her. Not the illusion of rescue, not the promise of protection, but the realization that her existence inside his world generated violence without her consent. She hadn't pulled a trigger. She hadn't ordered anything. But blood had still been spilled in her name. She remembered the orientation line she'd heard once, whispered by someone who knew better. Protection always leaves a trail. She saw it now. The trail wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. Disappeared. She didn't sleep. Not because she was afraid, but because sleep felt like complicity. The next morning she noticed the shift in how people treated her. Not fear. Recognition. They didn't look at her as collateral anymore. They looked at her as cause. A man held a door for her too long. A woman avoided her eyes entirely. She was no longer invisible. She was dangerous by association. That afternoon he did something irreversible. He claimed responsibility publicly. Not for the act. For her. She was listed on records she hadn't seen before: access logs, seating charts, security rotations. Her name appeared where it hadn't belonged. She confronted him again. You didn't have to do that. He did. This stops speculation. She shook her head. This locks me in. He didn't deny that either. You were already in. She understood the shift then. Protection had hardened into ownership. Not emotional. Strategic. The city would no longer debate whether touching her was allowed. They would calculate the cost. She felt smaller and heavier at the same time. Less free. More valuable. She asked the question that scared her most. If I leave now? He answered without hesitation. You won't be allowed to. That wasn't a threat. It was a statement of structure. You're not a secret anymore, he continued. You're a signal. She laughed once, sharp and empty. I never agreed to this alignment. He watched her carefully. You agreed when you stayed visible. She wanted to argue. She couldn't refute it. She had chosen not to disappear. She had chosen to stand beside him. And the world had responded accordingly. That night, another warning came. No words this time. Just absence. A woman she'd spoken to days earlier didn't answer her phone. A cafe closed without explanation. A name was quietly removed from a guest list. She understood then that the cost wasn't finished. It wouldn't be finished. As long as she remained beside him, the city would keep paying around her. She asked the question she'd been avoiding. Is there any version of freedom left? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, it wasn't comforting. Freedom requires anonymity. She looked at him. And I lost that. He nodded. The moment you were seen. She felt the echo of it settle into her bones. This wasn't captivity behind locked doors. This was captivity through consequence. She wasn't chained. She was weighted. She stood at the window that night, watching the city glow and recede at the same time. She hadn't been threatened. She hadn't been hurt. She had been protected. And protection had spilled blood elsewhere. She finally understood the lock. She wasn't being kept in by force. She was being kept in by what leaving would now cost everyone else. Morning arrived without drama. That was the cruelest part. No sirens. No headlines. No whispered alerts racing through the city. The world behaved as if nothing had fractured overnight. She woke to sunlight filtering through glass that didn't open. The room was immaculate. Neutral. Designed to calm. Her phone was on the table where she'd left it, charged, clean, wiped. She knew without checking. What had been erased mattered more than what remained. She walked the corridor slowly. Daff nodded. Not deferential. Not hostile. Informed. Everyone already knew where she stood. No one asked how she slept. Breakfast was prepared without a question she hadn't voiced. She noticed the absence first. No news alerts. No speculative blogs. No rumors threading the morning cycle. Whatever retaliation had unfolded was already gone. Not hidden. Erased. That was the difference. He joined her without sound, changed. Composed. As if the night had required nothing from him. The city resets quickly, he said. She didn't ask how quickly. She didn't need the answer. She looked out over the skyline. Traffic moved. People hurried. Flights departed on schedule. The airport felt like a lifetime ago. She said it quietly. I could still leave. He didn't correct her immediately. That hesitation told her everything. Leave where? He asked. Not where she was. Who she was. She understood the precision of the trap now. She wasn't being held in place. She was being followed by consequence. No destination existed where her absence wouldn't create a vacuum others would fill violently. She tried one last question. If I disappear on my own? He shook his head once. That would create uncertainty, and uncertainty invites correction. There it was. The final path, not blocked, not guarded, removed. She felt something collapse inside her. Not panic. Not grief, clarity. She wasn't afraid anymore. That had passed. She was calculating what remained of herself. He handed her a document. Official. She didn't need to read the details. The signature line told her enough. This finalized her status. Not public. Not secret. Integrated. This protects you, he said. She met his eyes. It protects you too. He didn't deny it. That was the honesty that made it unbearable. She signed. Not because she wanted to. Not because she agreed. Because the alternative would spill more blood she would never see but would always carry. The pen felt heavier than it should have. That weight stayed with her after. He left her alone after that. True alone. No guards in sight. No instructions. She stood in the quiet and realized this was the final orientation. Silence returned. Heavier than the noise, it pressed in on her ears. On her chest. This was what permanence sounded like. She walked to the mirror. Not the airport window. This one showed her clearly. Unchanged face. Different posture. She remembered the night she'd been stranded, how small the danger had felt then. Cancelled flight, a dying phone, a closed terminal. She had thought survival was the goal. She understood now. Survival had only been the entry point. What followed was selection. She replayed the moment in her mind. The tinted glass, the idle vanity, the harmless reflex of checking her reflection. She hadn't seen him. She hadn't known she was already visible. That was the mistake. Not looking, not noticing, she whispered it to herself, not as regret but as record. She thought the airport was the danger. By morning, she understood the truth. Being chosen was. The city outside moved on without her permission, without her acknowledgement. It always would. She remained where she was, not trapped, not free, positioned. And in this world, position was destiny. She stepped away from the mirror and into the quiet, carrying the echo with her, knowing that from this point forward, nothing would ever happen loudly again.